Catelyn. It was too far to make out the banners clearly, but even through the drifting fog she could see that they were white, with a dark smudge in their centre that could only be the dire-wolf of Stark, grey upon its icy field. When she saw it with her own eyes, Catelyn reined up her horse and bowed her head in thanks. The gods were good. She was not too late.
"They await our coming, my lady,"
Sir Willis Manderley said.
"as my lord father swore they would."
"Let us not keep them waiting any longer, sir." Sir Brynden Tully put the spurs to his horse and trotted briskly toward the banners. Catelyn rode beside him. Sir Willis and his brother Sir Wendell followed, leading their levies, near 1,500 men, some 20-odd knights and as many squires, 200 mounted lancers, swordsmen and free riders, and the rest foot, armed with spears, pikes, and tridents. Lord Wyman had remained behind to see to the defences of White Harbour. A man of near 60 years, he'd grown too stout to sit a horse.
"If I ever thought to see war again in my lifetime, I would have eaten a few less eels,"
he told Catelyn when he met her ship, slapping his massive belly with both hands. His fingers were fat as sausages.
"My boys will see you safe to your son, though, have no fear."
His boys were both older than Catelyn, and she might have wished that they did not take after their father quite so closely. Sir Willis was only a few eels short of not being able to mount his own horse. She pitied the poor animal. Sir Wendell, the younger boy, would have been the fattest man she'd ever known, had she only neglected to meet his father and brother. Willis was quiet and formal, Wendell loud and boisterous. Both had ostentatious walrus moustaches and heads as bare as a baby's bottom. Neither seemed to own a single garment that was not spotted with food stains. Yet she liked them well enough. They had gotten her to rob, as their father had vowed, and nothing else mattered. She was pleased to see that her son had sent eyes out, even to the east. The Lannisters would come from the south when they came, but it was good that Robb was being careful. My son is leading a host to war, she thought, still only half believing it. She was desperately afraid for him, and for Winterfell. Yet she could not deny feeling a certain pride as well. A year ago he'd been a boy. What was he now, she wondered. Outriders spied the Manderley banners, the white merman with trident in hand, rising from a blue-green sea, and hailed them warmly. They were led to a spot of high dry ground enough for a camp. Sir Willis called a halt there, and remained behind with his men to see the fires laid and the horses tended, while his brother Wendell rode on with Catelyn and her uncle to present their father's respects to their liege lord. The ground under their horses' hoofs was soft and wet. It fell away slowly beneath them as they rode past smoky peat fires, lines of horses, and wagons heavy laden with hard bread and salt beef. On a stony outcrop of land higher than the surrounding country, they passed a lord's pavilion with walls of heavy sailcloth. Catelyn recognized the banner, the bull moose of the Hornwoods, brown on its dark orange field. Just beyond, through the mists, she glimpsed the walls and towers of Moat Cailin, or what remained of them. Immense blocks of black basalt, each as large as a crofter's cottage, lay scattered and tumbled like a child's wooden blocks, half sunk in the soft boggy soil. Nothing else remained of a curtain wall that had once stood as high as Winterfell's. The wooden keep was gone entirely, rotted away 1,000 years past, with not so much as a timber to mark where it had first stood. All that was left of the stronghold of the first men were 3 towers. 3 where there had once been 20, if the tale-tellers were to be believed. The gatehouse tower looked sound enough, and even boasted a few feet of standing wall to either side of it. The drunkard's tower, off on the bog where the south and west walls once met, leaned like a man about to spew a bellyful of wine into the gutter. And the tall, slender children's tower, where legend said that the children of the forest had once called upon the nameless gods to send down the hammer of the waters, had lost half its crown. It looked as if some great beast had taken a bite out of the crenellations along the tower top, and spit the rubble across the bog. All 3 towers were green with moss. A tree was growing out between the stones on the north side of Gatehouse Tower, its gnarled limbs festooned with ropey white blankets of ghost skin. "Gods have mercy," Sir Brynden proclaimed when he saw what lay before them. "This is Moat Cailin. It's no more than a death trap," Catelyn finished. "I know how it looks, uncle. I thought the same the first time I saw it, but Ned assured me that this ruin is more formidable than it seems. The 3 surviving towers command the causeway from all sides, and any enemy must pass between them. The bogs here are impenetrable, full of quicksands and suckholes, and teeming with snakes. To assault any of the towers, an army would need to wade through waist-deep black muck, cross a moat full of lizard lions, and scale walls slimy with moss, all the while exposing themselves to fire from the archers in the other towers. She gave her uncle a grim smile. And when the night falls, there are said to be ghosts, old vengeful spirits of the north who hunger for southern blood. Sir Brynden chuckled. Remind me not to linger here. Last I looked, I was southern myself. Standards had been raised atop all 3 towers. The cast-dark sunburst hung from the drunkard's tower, beneath the direwolf. On the children's tower it was the Great John's giant and shattered chains, but on the gatehouse tower the stark banner flew alone. That was where Robb had made his seat. Catelyn made for it, with Sir Brynden and Sir Wendell behind her, their horses stepping slowly through the bog and plank road that had been laid across the green and black fields of mud. She found her son surrounded by his father's lord's bannermen in a draughty hall with a peat fire smoking in a black hearth. He was seated at a massive stone table, a pile of maps and papers in front of him, talking intently with Roose Bolton and the Great John. At first he did not notice her, but his wolf did. The great grey beast was lying near the fire, but when Catelyn entered he lifted his head and his golden eyes met hers. The lords fell silent one by one, and Robb looked up at the sudden quiet and saw her. "Mother!" he said with his voice thick with emotion. Catelyn wanted to run to him, to kiss his sweet brow, to wrap him in her arms and hold him so tightly that he would never come to harm. But here, in front of his lords, she dared not. He was playing a man's part now, and she would not take that away from him. So she held herself at the far end of the basalt slab they were using for a table. The direwolf got to his feet and padded across the room to where she stood. It seemed bigger than a wolf ought to be. "You've grown a beard," she said to Robb, while Greywind sniffed her hand. He rubbed his stubbled jaw, suddenly awkward. "Yes." His chin hairs were redder than the ones on his head. "I like it." Catelyn stroked the wolf's head gently. "It makes you look like my brother Edmure." Greywind nipped at her fingers, playful, and trotted back to his place by the fire. Sir Helman Tolhart was the first to follow the direwolf across the room to pay his respects, kneeling before her and pressing his brow to her hand. "Lady Catelyn," he said, "you are fair as ever, a welcome sight in these troubled times." The Glovers followed, Galbart and Robert, and Great John Umber, and the rest, one by one. Theon Greyjoy was the last. "I had not looked to see you here, my lady," he said as he knelt. "I had not thought to be here," Catelyn said, "until I came ashore at White Harbour, and Lord Wyman told me that Robb had called the banners. You know his son, Sir Wendell?" Wendell Manderley stepped forward and bowed as low as his girth would allow. "And my uncle, Sir Brynden Tully, who has left my sister's service for mine." "The Blackfish," Robb said. "Thank you for joining us, sir. We need men of your courage, and you, Sir Wendell. I'm glad to have you here. Is Sir Roderick with you as well, mother? I've missed him." "Sir Roderick is on his way north to White Harbour. I have named him Castellan, and commanded him to hold Winterfell until our return. Maester Lewin is a wise counsel, but unskilled in the arts of war."
"Have no fear on that count, Lady Stark," Great John told her in his bass rumble. "Winterfell is safe. We'll shove our swords up Tywin Lannister's bunghole soon enough, begging your pardons, and then it's on to the Red Keep to free Ned."
"My lady, a question, as it please you." Roose Bolton, Lord of the Dreadfort, had a small voice, yet when he spoke larger men quieted to listen. His eyes were curiously pale, almost without colour, and his look disturbing. "It is said that you hold Lord Tywin's dwarf son as captive. Have you brought him to us? I vow we should make good use of such a hostage." "I did hold Tyrion Lannister, but no longer," Catelyn was forced to admit. A chorus of consternation greeted the news. I was no more pleased than you, my lords. The gods thought fit to free him with some help from my fool of a sister. She ought not to be so open in her contempt, she knew, but her parting from the Eyrie had not been so pleasant. She had offered to take Lord Robert with her to foster him at Winterfell for a few years. The company of other boys would do him good, she had dared to suggest. Liza's rage had been frightful to behold. Sister or no, she had replied, if you try to steal my son, you will leave by the moon door. After that there was no more to be said. The lords were anxious to question her further, but Catelyn raised a hand. No doubt we will have time for all this later, but my journey has fatigued me. I would speak with my son alone. I know you will forgive me, my lords. She gave them no choice. Led by the ever-obliging Lord Hornwood, the bannermen bowed and took their leave. And you, Theon, she added when Greyjoy lingered. He smiled and left them. There was ale and cheese on the table. Catelyn filled a horn, sat, sipped, and studied her son. He seemed taller than when she'd left, and the wisps of beard did make him look older. Edmure was 16 when he grew his first whiskers. I will be 16 soon enough, Robb said. And you are 15 now. 15 and leading a host to battle. Can you not understand why I fear, Robb? His look grew stubborn. There was no one else. No one? She said. Pray, who were those men I just saw here a moment ago? Roose Bolton, Rickard Karstark, Galbert and Robert Glover, the Great John, Helmund Tollart. You might have given the command to any of them. Gods be good, you might have even sent Theon, though he would not have been my choice. They are not Starks, he said. They are men, Robb, seasoned in battle. You were fighting with wooden swords less than a year past. She saw anger in his eyes at that, but it was gone as quick as it came, and suddenly he was a boy again. I know, he said abashed. Are you sending me back to Winterfell? Catelyn sighed. I should. You ought never to have left. Yet I dare not. Not now. You've come too far. Some day these lords will look to you as their liege. If I pack you off now, like a child being sent to bed without his supper, they will remember and laugh about it in their cups. The day will come when you will need them to respect you, even fear you a little. Laughter is poison to fear. I will not do that to you, much as I might like to keep you safe. You have my thanks, Mother, he said, his relief obvious beneath the formality. She reached across the table and touched his hair. You are my firstborn, Robb. I have only to look at you to remember the day you came into the world, red-faced and squalling. He rose, clearly uncomfortable with her touch, and walked to the hearth. Grey Wind rubbed his head against his leg. You know about father? Yes. The reports of Robert's sudden death and Ned's fall had frightened Catelyn more than she dare say, but she would not let her son see her fear. Lord Manderley told me when I landed at White Harbour. Have you had any word of your sisters? There was a letter, Robb said, scratching his direwolf under the jaw. One for you as well, but it came to Winterfell with mine. He went to the table, rummaged amongst some maps and papers, and returned with a crumpled parchment. This is the one she wrote to me. I never thought to bring yours. Something in Robb's tone troubled her. She smoothed out the paper and read. Concern gave way to disbelief, then to anger, lastly to fear. This is Cersei's letter, not your sister's, she said when she was done. The real message is in what Sansa does not say. All this is about how kindly and gently the Lannisters are treating her. I know the sound of a threat, even whispered. They have Sansa hostage, and they mean to keep her. There's no mention of Arya, Robb pointed out, miserable. No. Catelyn did not want to think what that might mean. Not now. Not here. I had hoped, if you still held the imp, a trade of hostages. He took Sansa's letter and crumpled it in his fist, and she could tell from the way he did it that it was not the first time. Is there word from the Eyrie? I wrote to Aunt Liza asking for help. Has she called Lord Aaron's banners? Do you know? Will the Knights of the Vale join us? Only one, she said. The best of them, my uncle. But Brynden Blackfish was a Tully first. My sister is not about to stir beyond her bloody gate. Robb took it hard. Mother, what are we going to do? I brought this whole army together, 18,000 men, but I'm not certain. He looked to her, eyes shining. The proud young lord melted away in an instant, and quick as that he was a child again, a 15-year-old boy looking to his mother for answers. It would not do. What are you afraid of, Robb? She asked gently. He turned his head away to hide the first tear. If we march, even if we win, the Lannisters hold Sansa and father. They'll kill them, won't they? They want us to think so. You mean they're lying? I do not know, Robb. What I do know is that you have no choice. If you go to King's Landing and swear fealty, you will never be allowed to leave. If you turn your tail and retreat to Winterfell, your lords will lose all respect for you. Some may even go over to the Lannisters. Then the Queen, with much less to fear, can do as she likes with her prisoners. Our best hope, our only true hope, is that you can defeat the foe in the field. If you should chance to take Lord Tywin or the Kingslayer captive, why then a trade might very well be possible. But that is not the heart of it. So long as you have power enough that they must fear you, Ned and your sister should be safe. Cersei is wise enough to know that she may need them to make her peace, should the fighting go against her. What if the fighting doesn't go against her? Robb asked. What if it goes against us? Catelyn took his hand. Robb, I will not soften the truth for you. If you lose, there is no hope for any of us. They say there is naught but stone at the heart of Casterly Rock. Remember the fate of Rhaegar's children? She saw the fear in his young eyes then, but there was a strength as well. Then I will not lose, he vowed. Tell me what you would know of the fighting in the Riverlands, she said. She had to learn if he was truly ready. Less than a fortnight past they fought a battle in the hills below the Golden Tooth, Robb said. Uncle Edmure sent Lord Vance and Lord Piper to hold the pass, but the Kingslayer descended on them and put them to flight. Lord Vance was slain. The last word we had was that Lord Piper was falling back to join your brother and the other bannermen at Riverrun, with Jaime Lannister on his heels. That's not the worst of it, though. All the time they were battling in the pass, Lord Tywin was bringing a second Lannister army round from the south. It's said to be even bigger than Jaime's host. Father must have known that, because he sent out some men to oppose them, under the king's own banner. He gave the command to some southern lordling, Lord Eric or Derek or something like that, but Sir Raymond Derry rode with him, and the letter said there were other knights as well, and a force of father's own guardsmen. Only it was a trap. Lord Derek no sooner crossed the Red Fork than the Lannisters fell on him, the king's banner be damned, and Gregor Clegane took them in the rear as they tried to pull back toward the Mummers Ford. This Lord Derek and a few others may have escaped, no one's certain, but Lord Raymond was killed and most of our men from Winterfell. Lord Tywin has closed off the King's Road, it said, and now he's marching north toward Harrenhal, burning as he goes. Grim and grimmer, thought Catelyn. It was worse than she'd imagined. You mean to meet him here? She asked. If he comes so far, but no one thinks he will, Robb said. I've sent word to Howland Reed, father's old friend at Greywater Watch. If the Lannisters come up the neck, the Crannog men will bleed them every step of the way. But Galbart Glover says Lord Tywin is too smart for that, and Roose Bolton agrees. He'll stay close to the Trident, they believe, taking the castles of the River Lords one by one, until Riverrun stands alone. We need to march south to meet him. The very idea of it chilled Catelyn to the bone. What chance would a 15-year-old boy have against seasoned battle commanders like Jaime and Tywin Lannister? Is this wise? You are strongly placed here. It's said that the old kings of the north could stand at Moat Cailin and throw back hosts 10 times the size of their own. Yes, but our food and supplies are running low, and this is not land we can live off easily. We've been waiting for Lord Manderley, but now that his sons have joined us, we need to march." She was hearing the Lord's bannerman speaking with her son's voice, she realized. Over the years she'd hosted many of them at Winterfell and been welcomed with Ned to their own hearths and tables. She knew what sorts of men they were, each one. She wondered if Robb did. And yet there was sense in what they said. This host her son had assembled was not a standing army such as the free cities were accustomed to maintain, nor a force of guardsmen paid in coin. Most of them were small folk, crofters, field hands, fishermen, sheep-herders, the sons of innkeeps and traders and tanners, leavened with a smattering of sellswords and free-riders hungry for plunder. When their lords had called, they came, but not forever. "Marching is all very well," she told her son, "but where and to what purpose? What do you mean to do?" Robb hesitated. "The Great John thinks we should take the battle to Lord Tywin and surprise him," he said. "But the Glovers and the Carstarks feel we'd be wiser to go round his army and join up with Uncle Sir Edmure against the Kingslayer." He ran his fingers through his shaggy mane of auburn hair, looking unhappy. "Though by the time we reach Riverrun, I'm not certain." "Be certain," Catelyn told her son, "or go home and take up that wooden sword again. You cannot afford to seem indecisive in front of men like Roose Bolton and Rickard Karstark. Make no mistake, Robb. These are your bannermen, not your friends. You named yourself Battle Commander. Command." Her son looked at her, startled, as if he could not credit what he was hearing. "As you say, Mother. I'll ask you again. What do you mean to do?" Robb drew a map across the table, a ragged piece of old leather covered with lines of faded paint, one end curled up from being rolled. He weighed it down with his dagger. "Both plans have virtues, but look, if we try to swing round Lord Tywin's host, we take the risk of being caught between him and the Kingslayer, and if we attack him, by all reports he has more men than I do, and a lot more armoured horse. The Great John says that won't matter if we catch him with his breeches down, but it seems to me that a man who's fought as many battles as Tywin Lannister won't be so easily surprised." "Good," she said. She could hear echoes of Ned in his voice as he sat there, puzzling over the map. "Tell me more." "I'd leave a small force here to hold Moat Cailin, archers mostly, and march the rest down the causeway," he said. "But once we're below the neck, I'd split our host in two. The foot can continue down the King's Road, while our horsemen cross the Green Fork at the Twins." He pointed. "When Lord Tywin gets word we've come south, he'll march north to engage our main host, leaving our riders free to hurry down the west bank to Riverrun." Robb sat back, not quite daring to smile, but pleased with himself and hungry for her praise. Catelyn frowned down at the map. "You'd put a river between the two parts of your army." "And between Jaime and Lord Tywin," he said eagerly. The smile came at last. "There's no crossing on the Green Fork above the Ruby Road where Robert won his crown, not until the Twins, all the way up here, and Lord Frey controls the bridge. He's your father's bannerman, isn't he?" The late Lord Frey, Catelyn thought. "He is," she admitted, "but my father has never trusted him. Nor should you." "I won't," Robb promised. "What do you think?" She was impressed despite herself. He looks like a Tully, she thought. Yet he's still his father's son, and Ned taught him well. "Which force would you command?" "The horse," he answered at once. Again, like his father, Ned would always take the more dangerous task himself. "And the other?" "The Great John is always saying he would like to smash Lord Tywin. I thought I'd give him the honour." It was his first misstep, but how to make him see it without wounding his fledgling confidence? "Your father once told me that the Great John was as fearless as any man he'd ever known." Robb grinned. "Grey Wind ate two of his fingers and he laughed about it. So you agree, then?" "Your father is not fearless," Catelyn pointed out. "He is brave, But that is very different. Her son considered that for a moment. The eastern host will be all that stands between Lord Tywin and Winterfell, he said thoughtfully. Well, them and whatever few bowmen I have left here at the moat. So I don't want someone fearless, do I? No, you want cold cunning, I should think, not courage. Roose Bolton, Robb said at once. That man scares me. Then let us pray he will scare Tywin Lannister as well. Robb nodded and rolled up the map. I'll give the commands and assemble an escort to take you home to Winterfell. Catelyn had fought to keep herself strong, for Ned's sake and for this stubborn, brave son of theirs. She had put despair and fear aside, as if they were garments she did not choose to wear. But now she saw she had donned them after all. I am not going to Winterfell, she heard herself say, surprised at the sudden rush of tears that blurred her vision. My father may be dying behind the walls of Riverrun. My brother is surrounded by foes. I must go to them.
Now, if only Catelyn could take her own advice.
Then yeah, maybe none of the things that have happened in the last couple of 100 pages would have happened. She gives Robb some solid good advice.
She does. And it's kind of funny that she's so tactically minded. Maybe she just learned from all of her mistakes. Maybe that's it.
Maybe.
For all this, she was like, oh, God, everything I've done is wrong. Robb, just do the opposite of what I would do.
I think this is actually one of my favorite Catelyn chapters. If I had to pick a favorite Catelyn chapter, it's hard.
Why is that?
Because there's so many good ones.
No, why is it your favorite?
Because I think you really get I think you get a really good deep dive into Catelyn's mindset. She's thinking like the Lady of Winterfell, but she's also very much a mom in this chapter. And she just keeps going back and forth between, like, you know, she thinks about her son being a man now, but he was a bebe once, and now he's being a man, and he's so much like Ned, but
He's got a beard.
yeah, and she's just like, he's got a beard now, and it's like that whole, like, mom thing where you... Like, this is just a very real moment that could be in any fiction anywhere. That moment where the mom realizes that their child is growing up and becoming an adult and becoming who they are. But it's set within this fantasy world where all this crazy shit is happening, and Catelyn is realizing her son is putting himself in grave danger, and he's growing up, and this and that, and so she's trying to help him while also trying to grapple with the fact that she's been gone so long, and now she's come back, and, like, all of a sudden, like, her son is trying to be a man and is becoming a man, and she's gotta, like, digest that. And, you know, as soon as she sees him, she says, oh, like, all she wants to do is run up and hug him and squeeze him, but she can't, because he's in front of his bannermen, and she can't embarrass him like that.
Can't embarrass him in front of his friends.
Nope.
Robbie! Oh my goodness, look at your beard!
Right? And I just think that Martin writes this really, really well. It's... So this chapter, going back through the second time through, was... I read it from a different perspective. Also, like, being a mom now, reading this chapter, I can understand those sentiments a lot better.
Which, I feel like every chapter I point something out that we have to credit to Martin, is the fact that he was able to get that emotion across. And he is obviously not a mother. I don't even think he has children.
No, he doesn't.
No, so he doesn't really have any of that.
Because he never got married until, like... I don't think he's ever even been married until, like, he got married, like...
You don't have to be married to have children.
No, but I'm saying I don't think he was... I wasn't saying that. I was just saying I don't even think he got married until...
Well, either
like, a few years ago.
It's been
Never mind having kids or having that kind of
yeah. I know he got married a few years ago. I
Yeah.
thought it was his second wife, but maybe I'm wrong.
I really don't know. I don't follow his personal life, but I am pretty
I
sure he
don't
doesn't
really
have
either.
kids.
Okay then.
Which is also number one. He can write those feelings really well, but
Well, one
not
of the
being
things.
a dad, he also writes kids really well in this adult setting.
Well, kids are different. We were all kids once.
That's true.
If you're honest with yourself, you can know what it's like to be a kid. A lot of people like to spice up their childhood by saying, "No, I was the brave kid. I did this and that."
It's the rose-tinted glasses,
yeah.
and I think it's the nostalgia. I will say, and this is just an opinion, I think I've never read an author who writes kids as well as Stephen King writes kids. Stephen King writes kids. Like, Stephen King captures the magic of childhood like no one else I've ever read.
Well, I mean, he's got that, but I know it's
that's
been
like his thing.
credited to Martin many, many times that he's one of the only male writers who can write compelling female characters, or at least the best at it, which probably goes into his writing of Catelyn too.
He does write women really well. I think it's interesting. I will just throw this out here real quick, kind of to still just say, I also think To Kill a Mockingbird, Harper Lee wrote those kids brilliantly. But anyway, I think it's interesting that Martin is not only able to write women so well, but he's able to write these strong female characters within such a misogynist society. He writes this extremely misogynist society. It's a typical European medieval society. And yet he can create female characters who are not only strong and compelling, but they're not like tropes, and they're not, well, maybe I shouldn't say tropes. They're not like 2D stereotypes of this character or this type of character. They're like really fleshed out, complex human beings. And Martin does deserve a lot of credit for that, because he set himself up in a framework where it is very difficult to be a strong, complex female character.
Mm-hmm.
And then he does it.
Yeah, I think Martin really...
Except for that one chapter.
Martin really bases a lot of what he writes in reality. You know, the hero doesn't always win. When he said...
not everyone is completely good or bad.
When he wrote women, I love the response he gave, because it was just, you know, with women, I like to think of them as just people like everyone else. When they asked how he wrote women so well. Like, he really researches the reality of the situation. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if the whole battle plan that Rob had laid out, if you bring down the map of Westeros and like lay out where everyone is in the positioning, like a actual like army tactician, I don't know what they're actually called, but
military strategist.
Yeah, there we go. Would probably come up with a similar like plan of attack.
Or maybe there was some actual battle at some point in European history surrounding that kind of geography that actually took place.
Yeah, that could be
because
too.
He's really into all that history, and I know he said multiple times that like the War of the Roses is a huge inspiration for Game of Thrones.
Mm-hmm.
The only time so far that he's failed with writing women is that one chapter where Catelyn notices her sister's titties. That was weird.
Yeah, it was a little weird.
It was just not like... It was just a little out of, like, I don't know. It was... But again, this was his first book, and I think the writing improves. I think when we get to the next book, you'll see, like, this book is good, and then we get to the next book, and you'll see it's, like, even taken up, like, another notch. But I just remember reading that again, going, it's weird, man. Okay. But anyway, back to the chapter.
But back to the chapter. I like how Catelyn is kind of almost being the little finger of Rob's group, where she's kind of telling Rob, like, they're your bannermen, they're not your friends. Don't trust them.
Yeah, yeah. I also like that she's asking him questions and trying to get him to come up with the answer on his own. Like, she's trying to teach him to think strategically. She's like, "Oh, you're gonna leave the Great John to do this? Is he really the best person to do it?" And Rob's like, "Well, yeah,
He's gonna
duh.
charge in there swinging.
Yeah.
Do
Is
you
that
really want that?
right? Or do you want someone who's more patient and tactful?" And Rob's like, "Oh, maybe." And she's like, "Who would that
Will
be?"
know when to retreat if necessary.
Right. And then he's like, "Oh,
And
maybe..."
not just wipe out half your army.
Right. And then Rob's like, "Oh, maybe Roose Bolton would be better." She like kind of gives him hints and she's not just giving him all the information, she's kind of trying to really help him kind of like
Grow as a strategist and leader.
yeah, and kind of try to get
And-
there on his own.
Also, let's talk about Roose Bolton. What an awkward situation. So, Catelyn, I hear you've had Tyrion as a captive. Where is he? Well, you see, funny story about that.
Yeah.
My sister is an idiot.
Yeah. Dude, I bet that while Rob and Catelyn are sitting there having this really great discussion, honestly, because not only is this a great Catelyn chapter, but like you really kind of get to know Rob better and see Rob through an adult's eyes. You see Rob through Bran's eyes, and now you're seeing Rob through Catelyn's eyes, and you're just getting more of a sense of who he is as a person. But while they're having their conversation, how much do you want to bet that all the other lords are sitting in a room somewhere going, "Oh my God! She doesn't have Tyrion! What the hell are we gonna do?" This
Right,
is
there goes the plans out the window.
right.
I'm sure that's what Roose Bolton was thinking.
He probably
no,
walked
I
out
was-
like, "Oh Jesus!" We're
I was
doomed."
thinking that the other lords are like at the door with a cup to the door, just listening in.
Even better, right? Hello, Miss Pam. Hello, Miss Pam. I also like that Grey Wind came over and like said hi to Catelyn and like let her pet him and stuff. He was like, "Oh, hello, Mama," the mama of the house.
I know.
And she notices like that Grey Wind is like muscular and lean and fit,
Bigger than a normal wolf.
bigger than a normal wolf. I just always pay attention to the descriptions of the direwolves because I really feel like it's a reflection on
On the
the Stark children,
owners.
on the owner,
Yeah.
quote owners, yeah. Because I feel like that's accurate of Rob. He's muscular. He's kind of he's growing bigger by growing up, etc. Are you ready to go hang out with Tyrion?
Oh my God, that man's still alive.
We get to see Tyrion again. It's only been how long?
Catelyn has made it back. How far has Tyrion made it in the same time?
Right? Catelyn is at what, Moat Cailin?
Yeah.
We're at Moat Cailin. Where is Tyrion? What has happened to him? Has his manhood been chopped off and fed to the goats? Tune in next time to find out.